Hello and welcome back, everyone, to Admitted, your source for exam prep and college admissions. We've got the wonderful panel here today. Jess, hello.
Hey, everyone.
Byron.
Greetings.
Chris, how are you?
Morning.
Fantastic. Well, let's get into this because I know I just put my winter coat in the closet for the rest of the season. The weather is warming up. I'm excited for sunshine and baseball. Summer is here. What are we supposed to do with test prep in the summer? Jess, is there anything we need to be focusing on for the summer?
We need to focus on prep. And Byron's going to talk to us a little bit about what are the benefits of working in the summer with test prep. Byron?
You got it. Well, let me just start off by saying, what is the disadvantage of not preparing in the summer? And, one of two things we'll often see happening as we're working with test prep students is, one, they feel like they're under too much pressure or they've run out of time, right? Because they've put things off, their schedules are busy. We get it, we understand. So the real benefit of doing summer test prep is that you get to take some of that pressure off of you if you plan well in advance, right? And you can actually get a lot done in the summer without a lot of competing or conflicting schedule that is just very typical of a high school student, right? So summer can really free somebody up. It can really take a lot of the stress away so that they can actually focus on their test prep and give themselves that dedicated time. And of course, without all the distractions and the competing interests that they might have in the summer, they're a little bit more relaxed because they do have some free time. And gosh, their brains can be more focused. They can be less stressed. And one of the other things that we're doing is we're mitigating this thing that we know all too well that happens in the summer when a student typically is forgetting about 30% of what they learned over the school year. We call that brain drain. So why not mitigate brain drain by focusing on your summer test prep? So let's talk about a couple more advantages. And one of those would be, gosh, if you're focusing on the summer, you can spend those 2 to 3 months and get it done before that fall school schedule starts, right? And even if you were continuing to work on your test prep, you'll have another opportunity to maybe take a second test, right? And get that done before the winter break. So by starting in the summer, working through the summer, you can actually put yourself in the driver's seat and get ahead of the game, right? And, obviously when you're in school in the fall, there's going to be all of those competing interests again with sports and activities. So summer's a great time. So if you're thinking you want to take a break in the summer, sure, go ahead, take a break, take, a few days and put everything aside, let yourself relax, and then commit yourself to getting ahead because boy, when you're preparing for test prep, this is a major deal, right? And it has a significant influence on your future. So take advantage of this great opportunity that we have in the summer to prepare for test prep.
Thanks, Byron. Those are some great benefits. I think you answered a question there or an issue that a lot of families deal with, which is a student has worked all year long and they're looking forward to the summer and they want to take a break and it's nice out and they don't want to do any more school, right? And your solution you just said was take a break, take a couple of days, right? Don't take the entire summer off. Take a couple of days, reset, get back into that mode of learning. And exactly right. Your schedule's less over the summer. You can plan. All that time that you were in class, 5, 6, 7 hours a day is excellent time to replace with test prep. So great benefits there. And Chris, so let's all agree test prep is great for the summer. I've worked all year long in my schoolwork. Is it something I can go into cold over the summer for test prep, or what sort of preparation do I need to look at before I even think about what the summer looks like?
So if we're looking at readiness, and that's a good point, James, sort of on the heels of the benefits, why test prep in summer. There are two main mistakes people make before they've even begun the process. One is to not prepare and just jump in. Oh, we'll just take the first test. We know we're going to take it a couple of times anyway. You do not want to treat an official SAT or ACT exam as a glorified practice test for a wide range of reasons we've discussed in prior videos. So really, that's on the one hand, sort of a cavalier, we're going to take the summer off, we'll get around to it when we get around to it, and so on. The other mistake is sort of on the other end of the spectrum, where people will go through and, well, we're not ready. We need to do a whole bunch of study first. We've hired, a writing tutor, a reading tutor, a math tutor, but, all these things, when they don't even really understand, first of all, what's the anchor? What are the goals? What are we after? And so it's, first of all, important to understand this has to solve a problem. And what is the problem? Well, the problem is having a portfolio that's going to make you competitive for college admissions and for scholarships. And the key is to make sure you understand what scores are involved. So one easy way to do that is figure out from the colleges that you're targeting, see what the last year's average scores were for the freshmen, for the SAT and the ACT. And while you're there, you can take a look at GPA and a number of other factors that you're using in your college admissions decisions. Secondly, see where that stands and how competitive the college is. You'll want to take a practice test of each, an official practice test, not one that some friend found someplace on the internet, because we know everything on the internet is true, right? So you want to make sure that you're taking an official standardized practice test so you can measure yourself against the standard. That's why it's a standardized test. And once you do that, you can use that as sort of an initial initial sense of what is the gap. It's really a gap analysis. First of all, what were the target scores, really the average scores for the colleges of interest that you have, and where are you coming in? If it's a 100-point gap, it's one thing. If it's a 500-point gap, that's entirely another. Do the same for scholarships in your area, the state scholarships, other scholarships that are being offered by organizations, professional associations, et cetera, that you might be applying for, and then see what those numbers. Then you'll know what that gap is, and ultimately that will determine whether any official program is required and how much, and then what you can do with those numbers once you've taken the practice tests. Then you can start to have a conversation hopefully with one of the Tutor Doctor offices in your local area and say, I took these practice tests. Can we review these reports? Most offices do that at no cost because we're here to. And then last year, we typically ask this as a trivia question, but last year's average SAT and ACT scores were quite low, right around the 1100-ish range for the SAT. And I believe the ACT was around 18.9 or something. They've fallen to their lowest level since really the early 90s. So at this point, a student who has a strong score really has a leg up when it comes to college admissions and scholarship.
That's awesome. You mentioned taking a peek at the GPA requirements. Are there any specific courses that we should be targeting as far as from a readiness standpoint for prep? Are there any baseline courses they need to be looking at, and what do those grades need to be?
Yeah, generally we have sort of three at the top level, three go, no-go criteria when it comes to test prep. Number one, have you completed the 10th grade? Now, there are some limited exceptions for people that are going to Tier 1 athletic scholarships that have to have an SAT or ACT score supplied much, but for most students, complete the 10th grade so you have exposure to all the requisite material and sort of a maturity thing. Secondly, completion of Algebra 2, ideally with the splash of trig that's in there, with at least a B grade, completion of English 10 with at least a B grade. Anything beyond that is additive and helpful, but really that's the baseline. And the best time to talk about readiness, the best time for many students to take the SAT or ACT prep is in that summer between the sophomore and junior years. We don't want that to get away because there's really not a whole lot else you're going to learn in your junior and senior years that will help a lot on the exams, but you're going to find more of a drawback when it comes to taking your prep and then the tests later into your junior year, or heaven forbid your senior year, unless you're at that point now and you have no.
Excellent. So our 7th, 8th, 9th grade parents and students, pay attention to your scheduling, making sure that Algebra 2, your English 10, those are some prerequisite courses to get out your freshman, sophomore year so you can prepare yourself for summer between 10th and 11th. So be ready there. Fantastic. Thank you, Chris. All right, Jeff, switching gears to the actual tests and dates for those. We know that 2025 has been interesting for dates, right? In March of 25, we had the very first official digital SAT, which, depending on who you talked with, went great. Or if you were affected by any of those power outages and network outages, you maybe had to retake it, right? And then in April, there was the revised digital ACT. And so both groups, College Board and ACT, are all over the test dates and the schedules. Tell us what that looks like for timing for the summer and how that aligns with available test dates.
Well, I'm going to put this on the screen so we can all take a look. Yeah, April just happened last Saturday. So that was the first digital ACT. We did have some kids taking it, and so I will let you all know the results. But timing is really, really, really important. Typically, once we have a test prep going, part of that is figuring out which national test is going to be the first test you're going to take. And then typically what we do is back the program out based on, the hours that, and we're going to talk about that when we talk about prep. But not on this chart. The SAT just added a September date, which is a newsflash. Newsflash. There's an SAT date now on September 13th, which is really, really good because that's sort of a gap here in September, right? There is an ACT typically in September as well. So SAT kind of wanted to be competitive and add a September test date. So it's really important to look at, do you have enough time between when we're planning to start the SAT or ACT program to the test date? And many times families come to me and say, well, we were already registered for a test date that may be like a month and a half. And many times, especially during peak time, you don't have enough time really. So that's the ideal, is if we're going to test prep over the summer, I'm going to take this down so we can talk. If we're going to prep over the summer, really strategizing, we can now make intensive prep because we can have maybe 2 or 3 sessions a summer as opposed to more diluted where one session a week, a week during school, sometimes with kids that have heavy duty schedules, is all we can really fit in. So that timing is really important where we're going to plan out which fall test makes the most.
And is that something, I know you had it on the chart there, as far as the test dates, but that's not something I can plan to take in August, right? I need to be planning out a few months to not only for test prep, but also for registrations, right?
Typically, yeah, especially that August test date, by the way, everybody, that August test date fills up like there's probably rising seniors want to get in sort of their last hurrah, their last test date. And that test date fills up very quickly, especially if you're going to a center where they have limited seating, or you're still taking maybe, something where you're going in person and it's not, you can still take one in a testing center.
We've heard terrible stories about folks wanting to take a date and they hadn't registered and they missed the deadline, or there were no seats full, so they had to drive a couple hours to another location. That all messes with your brain that morning of the test.
100%, and it adds added stress.
Yeah.
I got a student who, I don't know if you guys know the beaches of New Jersey, the Jersey Shore, decided to take the closest place he could get was Wildwood which is almost over 2 hours away. And the family decided to make a family vacation and go down to Wildwood for the weekend, and that was the highest. So that was interesting. They went away on a little break, got away and cleared his mind, was at the beach, and that was the highest score he got was on that.
Years ago, we had a student in San Diego who took an SAT prep. They were going to Boston, and the wedding was Saturday afternoon. And since he wasn't in the wedding party, he was taking an SAT.
Wow.
And that was during COVID time frame where you could not find a test in San Diego. So it worked out really well. And Jessica, just like yours did, that was his highest score.
Yep. So the timing of it, the planning is one of the most important.
Sounds like the East Coast is a place to take tests. I mean, everything I learned about the Jersey Shore I saw on TV, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's relevant, right?
And I don't know how many of those were SAT elites.
SAT prep, right? So just to recap, Jess, we've got June and July dates for tests that we can provide as practice tests, official tests. We can benchmark tests, and we've been working on test prep to see where our score is. And then we've got plenty of fall opportunities, August, September, October, November, December, for official tests, last tests, increased tests, tests that you can take in order to increase your super score. A lot of options there, but you have to plan for
You
it.
have to plan.
Okay.
Byron is the plan.
All right, let's go to the king then. And let's talk planning. All right, so I know what I want to do. What do I need to put in place to create a plan that I can execute?
How are we going to go about doing this? That's right. Well, on a fundamental level, this is something that you can try to do on your own, and maybe you've talked to a college counselor, but what's really going to be helpful is if you talk to a professional who understands what's all involved. And I think one of the important things that I've been able to communicate with my clients is that by having the dialogue and discussion with a professional, it generates the right questions, right? The right questions so if you're asking the right questions, you can get the right answers. And so often, a lot of students will feel like, there's a test date at school. We're just going to do that, because that's all that they're asking of me, and we're kind of being herded through the process like, the cattle are, and we're just hoping. Well, there's a better way to do things, and that's the plan and to strategize. And, obviously, if the first thing to do is, of course, reach out, talk to the schools specifically. I recommend the programs in that school that you're going to be applying for. Find out, what are they expecting? Do they have a preference, for an ACT or an SAT? Do they, what are their standards for scores and scholarships, right? You want to know this information. And because, again, you're not shooting in the dark, you're actually shooting for real goals. Okay. So if you've done that kind of groundwork, start giving you some direction. One of the things that Tutor Doctor offers is a cognitive skill set that will give us neuroscientific data about what a student's cognitive strengths are, and we can help a student recognize and understand where their strengths are and how that correlates to the ACT or T. Those tests are designed differently. We also learn differently, right? So if you can go into a test knowing that, hey, this is the test that's going to best demonstrate my strengths and skills, wow, wouldn't you want to do that, or at least spend most of your time? That's something a professional like Tutor Doctor can do to help you. But you also, take those practice tests. We would always start off with a baseline test and find out, okay, what is the data telling us about your strengths and weaknesses? Is it showing us? Is it giving us additional data to say, yeah, you ought to really prepare for the SAT or the ACT? It really doesn't matter to us as long as you're doing the right thing. Now, there's certainly situations or certain students where it will make sense to prepare for best. That's not in most cases, but for those that are, anything you can do to set yourself apart and distinguish yourself from everybody else, you want to do that, right? As much as you can. Decide with that test prep professional what is the best route. Look at the calendar, right? And start deciding, okay, when are those test dates, and how do I actually prepare for that, right? Put a plan together, right? An actual plan, and a test prep professional can help you do that. Set those target dates, set those test dates, set those score goals, do all those types of things so that you're going in with a game plan and you can measure your results against secondary results, right? So keep managing and analyzing that data to see what it's telling us so that we can keep you moving forward. Then, of course, super score has been mentioned here a few times. And if you're a high achiever student and you want to really set yourself apart, yeah, think about taking the test on multiple test dates. So going back to summer test prep, if you're a junior, and you're prepping right now, this is great, right? Because you're setting yourself up to be able to take the test, multiple times. pull those best scores on those different modules, submit those, and be sitting pretty, right? So there's a lot more that could be said, but if you go in with a plan, yeah, you can try to do this on your own, but really you'd be serving yourself if you got a test prep professional who will come alongside you, guide you, direct you, help you ask the right questions so that you get the right answers and put you in the driver's seat so that you're in charge. And wouldn't it be great if the schools were calling you instead of do that with a plan?
Mr. Optimistic there. I love that. He wants the best for you. Just know that.
100%.
I'm thinking while you're talking, Byron, I was thinking about another opportunity for why you have bring a professional on board is that third party, you know, whether it's a tutor doctor person or someone else, that third party is going to see things you maybe don't when your nose is in the book. And I know I've made this recommendation before. We've worked on SAT test prep. We've taken practice tests. We've taken an official, and we've made the recommendation to pivot to ACT. And you might think, well, time. Well, it wasn't, because algebra is still algebra, science is still science, and English is still English. The way you prep for it, the way it's asked, the way it's tested is a little different, but you're still learning knowledge that is going to support that. And a third party such as Tutor Doctor can see that and say, let's pivot and create a new plan. So, you know, what was Ben Franklin's old adage, failure to plan is a plan to fail. Well, you got to be able to change the plan to be successful. So, great there. All right, so let's acknowledge that everyone believes summer is the right to do this. We've taken the right courses. We know what our target scores are. We've planned out what our test dates are going to be. We've created a plan to execute. What does test prep need to look like over the summer? What is a typical test prep program look like over the summer, Jess? How do you merge in that?
Well, typically we have learned over the last 13 years sweet spot. And the sweet spot is between 18 to 30 hours of prep. And our prep programs are usually 90 minutes or sessions. I find some kids, if they have ADHD, whatnot, they can't do 2 hours. They've got to do the night, which is fine. But during the summer, we can really do at least 2 sessions a week, which is really intensified, which is great. It's optimal because sometimes during the school year, it's a little diluted. So we would say usually 90-minute to 2-hour sessions, typically 1, 2, or 3 times a week if you can. And that means if they're signed up for and registered for, say, a September test, we can take all of August and really intensify and get them ready in a 30-hour program. Ideal. But we say a lot of families ask us, well, do you guarantee a score increase? And I'll tell you why we do not. Because there's one determining factor, and that your kid has got to make a commitment. Homework. Okay, because it's homework. It's not like waving a magic wand and all of a sudden your score will go up. Your tutor is there to help you with the plan, to see your gaps, to help you through things. But your student has to do the work and has to do practice tests. And that's ideally what we always tell the student. If they're in,
if it's been working, why change it, right? That seems like a very robust program. Chris, would you add anything to what test prep programs need to look West Coast?
Yeah, I would, and because I believe right now there are some who are not convinced, even after hearing what's been said so far, that they're not convinced summer is the right time, and they're not convinced of the process. So just to crystallize things, the chart that was shown earlier of the dates, there's a definite spring season and fall season when you take a look at the tests themselves when they're offered. And then if you dial back, as was said earlier, about 12 to 14 weeks to begin the process. In summer, you can make that a shorter time frame. You can double up sessions in most cases. But what that really means is you got to put a stake in the ground. What is my first official test date going to be? The reason why the August SAT and the September ACT have always been very heavily subscribed. Why is that? Is because a lot of people through the years have found summer as being sort of that nominal time for the student to take their test prep. So, and the other reason is you don't want to take your test prep during summer and then wait until January to take you're going to get very rusty. So treat your test preparation, whether you take it in summer or if you're hearing this in March and you're going to start, treat it as sort of a capstone. You're synthesizing what you have learned. James, as you said, English is English, math is math. But on the SAT and ACT, many times these questions are asked in a manner that's unlike how it's being asked in their high school exams. So we go through test taking strategy. It's not just about the content and how whip smart you are. There's the test taking strategies. There's also the pacing and timing that's required. Right before this call, I read a report from a tutor, actually somebody who had taken the new ACT, and late breaking news here. And what they had said is with the shortened, the questions that seemed to be thrown out the window were easier ones. So whereas particularly with math, when you go from a sort of an easy to a hard progression, the easier questions were sort of thrown out the window. And now you're starting with questions that are sort of in the medium difficulty range and above, even though it's a shortened test. So there are adapting changes. So even the tutors are having to get used to what the new formats are with the SAT and ACT. So even the tutors and people that are experts in the industry are preparing themselves to be better prepared to prepare students, all the more that students now really do need test prep. Summer is a great time to do it. So you want to start given that sort of 8 weeks before your first initial test if you're doubling up sessions. And then most students will take the test 2 and sometimes even 3 times. So you want to make sure that you have those times and then be able to be done, by maybe Thanksgiving or Christmas if you are taking summer test prep. So those are all sort of the reasons as to why summer, in our opinion, really is students.
That's great. I think if they're not convinced before this call and you didn't just convince them, the only other tool I have is FOMO, because all doing it, the fear of missing out, your friends are going to get a better score than you. The only thing is the summer. Here's the doctors the summer. Work tan and work on your test prep. Prevent the summer brain drain. Prevent going back in the fall and forgetting everything you crammed about in the fall or in the last school year. And don't be that senior that calls us up in the fall or worse in the spring and say, I have to do test prep. I don't have a score yet. Call Tutor Doctor. We've got locations all over the world. You can get us on tutordoctor.com, tutordoctor.com. Contact your local office, have a conversation. We've got a lot of ideas that work for a lot of different people. Figure out what the right plan is for you. But we've talked about the benefits of summer test prep. We talked about how to prepare for it. We've done everything but take the test for you. So give us a call. Let us help you where you need. From East Coast, appreciate it, to the Midwest here in Indiana. This is James, Byron out in Albuquerque, and all the way in San Diego, Chris. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on this edition of College Admissions, your guide to test prep and college admissions. This has been Admitted. Great day.
Thank you much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.